the MSI B850M Mortar WiFi, and it has a max speed of X16, and this is not shared. For the clear CMOS button, right, is protruding out, so we can feel it. There are a total of 3 M.2 slots. I have never came across any of those boards that having a 5 gig port. This is really very fantastic. It's a tanker and a performer. Other than that, I have nothing much to talk about this board. Nothing but full of praises. Hi everyone, today I'm extremely excited to share with you this brand new board coming from MSI, known as the B850M Mortar WiFi. Thanks to MSI to have loaned me this unit and to share with everyone. Now, why am I so excited about this brand new board? Based on the fact that some of you have known they have done tons of liquid AIO testing and benchmarking, and I've been using its older model, which is this, the B650M Mortar. I have been abusing this board for a long period of time, and till now is still performing rock solid. That's the reason why I'm so excited to share with you this brand new model, which is the B850M Mortar. Now, when you unbox, this is what you will see. A set of SATA cable. This is right angle. Extension front IO cable. This is meant for you to plug your front IO to this end over here. And this end is just one plug to your motherboard. Easy access, nicely done. This is known as the EZcom cable, which I will illustrate to you what does this do. A pair of M.2 standoff clips. Now this can be found on the motherboard itself, as you can see over here. So in the event if you want to replace it, right, you will have to make use of this tool which comes with it to unscrew. If let's say this is damaged, to unscrew it and to screw this in. Nice touch. Besides this, you will be provided one additional M.2 screw, the Wi-Fi antenna. Now this Wi-Fi antenna, the base is magnetic. This is something which I like, so that when you set up your system and to connect the Wi-Fi connector, right, I mean the Wi-Fi antenna, this you can just attach to anywhere of your case which is made of metal, and you'll stay there in place and you will not move about. You'll be provided with all this quick installation guide, the regulatory notice, the shout out leaflet, and a leaflet of stickers. And the most important part, which is the motherboard itself. This is a M-ATX motherboard. It has a 8-layer PCB with 2-ounce copper trays. The measurement of this board, the width and the length is of 244mm. And as for the height of the side VRM heatsink, this is measuring at 35mm. And as for the rear, this is measuring at 45mm. Now, as mentioned to you, the structure is pretty solid, pretty well built on the PCB. Same goes to the VRM heatsink, be it the side or the rear, and inclusive of the M.2 Shield at the bottom and the chipset heatsink. For the rear VRM, take a look. The design is very good, whereby you have fin stack over here, so the absorption of heat, right, they go spread on the fin stack. This will dissipate lots of heat, inclusive the top, where this whole plate over here, as you can see, this is very thin. Not really that thin, but you know, there's a certain amount, about 3mm or so. This whole plate over here, right, will dissipate even more heat. The concept of a cup and a plate, if you were to fill hot water on both and to leave it there, after a few minutes when you come back, right, the plate water will be much cooler compared to the cup, based on the fact that the plate is flat and thin, so it will dissipate more heat. So this applies to the plate on this rear VRM. Nice thought. And as for the side, same thing, tons of fins whereby you will absorb and to dissipate more heat out. As for the M.2, in the previous model where you have separate heatsink, but this is in one whole block. See? Nice, I like this. And on the chipset itself, they have improved on it too. This is non-shaky as compared to the previous. The previous one would shake and shake, but this is like the whole casting. Nicely done. Now, as for the power face of this motherboard, will be at 12 plus 2 plus 1 and having a power face of 60 amp. And over here, this is the 1718 socket that support AMD 9000, 8000 and 7000 processor. And with the power face this much, right, it's more than enough to cater for a high-end processor, not an issue, because the power face is exactly the same as the older model, inclusive of the amperage, which is 60 amp. I can run a 7950X or even a 9950X, no issue, and I can even do benchmark. So I believe this board will do exactly the same. Now coming to this section, there are a total of 4 DDR5 Dimm slot where it runs in dual channel and have a max capacity of 256 gig and have a max X-Pro profile of 8200. Now please be mindful, I know some of you might think that, oh, I populate all the 256, I can run at X-Pro profile 8200. No, don't think it that way. Take a look at my top left hand corner. It will list out all the specification. Now you will need to understand how RAM works, be it single RAM or dual RAMs, or maybe single rank and dual rank. All this you will need to understand how it works. Don't come to a conclusion whereby you populate any RAMs, you buy a very high bus speed RAM with tight timing and you populate it, you can run. No, it also greatly depends on your processor IMC, which is the chip that controls the RAM. So kindly take note on this. Now as for the PCI-E slot, there are a total of 2. The top slot, which is controlled by the processor, this is Gen 5, which is backward compatible, and it has a max speed of X16, and this is not shared. Same goes to the bottom, whereby this is Gen 4 at the speed of X4, but this is being controlled by the chipset. Now there are a total of 3 M.2 slots. Starting off with here, these two are controlled by the processor, and it is Gen 5 backward compatible, and again no lane sharing. Now inclusive of that, when you turn over the board, this is the hidden compartment where you can populate another M.2, which is Gen 4, and this is running off from the chipset. The mechanism is pretty straightforward. When you want to mount a GPU, taking a look at the top slot, okay, let me just zoom in. When you plug your GPU in, it is in lock position. If you want to remove the GPU, press on this button. As you can see, this lever over here, it will stay in place. This is a very good mechanism whereby you can use both hands to hold on to your GPU and to pull it out. So when you're done, right, you just unlock it, or should I say put it back to lock position. Nice touch. Now as for the M.2, there are swivel points over here, so when you plug, you just lock in place. It's that simple. Else for the back, okay, let me just zoom out. Okay, we have this slot over here. Now this, when you mount it, you will need to use the M.2 screws to screw on. Back to the front, just to show you how this locking mechanism on the M.2 Shield is toolless. Press on the back where you have this lever, leave it up from the back, and you can just leave the whole plate up, and this will expose the M.2. There are a total of 4 thermal pads, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top. To place this shield back, align the grooving on the shield, as you can see here, to the notch over here. Angle it at 30 degrees, then place it down, clip it on. Now, for the M.2, be it the top or the bottom, they share the same fit as the PCI-E slot, as in there are no lane sharing. So all this will run according to its speed. Now, something to take note, if you are running a 8000 series processor, all the Gen 5 PCI-E slot or the Gen 5 M.2, right, they will be at Gen 4 and not Gen 5. Now, something which I am actually considering if this is actually a good idea. I mean, this is terrific to have an additional M.2 slot. So total it gives you 3. But the thing is that this does not have a heatsink. And if you were to buy those M.2 with heatsink, right, your case cutout must be pretty big. If not, there will be obstacle. This is one. Or another way is that you can populate this, place a thermal pad. If let's say the case itself, right, the motherboard cutout, right, this is whole piece metal, right, you can place a thermal pad so that it will touch the case plate, so it will dissipate heat. So this is one of the solution. Now, besides this, right, I would say that on the safe side, I would place this Gen 3 M.2. You will not generate heat that much, based on the fact that this is directly below here. Okay, so imagine that 2 M.2. Okay, imagine this is the 2 M.2, one at the top, one at the bottom. When it's sandwiched in between the PCB, right, this area will accumulate a lot of heat. That's the reason why, well, for me, right, I would just place a Gen 3 M.2 instead of Gen 4. This board do come with a onboard audio, which is making use of the Realtek ALC 4080, and it supports 7.1 channel surround sound. Now, as for the connection point, starting off with these pins over here, these are meant for the TPM module. Follow on my left, this is the audio socket, which is meant for your front I/O, headphone and microphone jack. Followed by a 12V RGB connector, a 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, which is commonly used, and all this pin out which says JDP1 and J-, these are meant for a external controller. And that controller, if you have it right, when you plug to this, you will be able to control much more advanced stuff on the motherboard itself. But for us, we normally do not use. Next will be a 4-pin PWM fan connector and a EZcon socket. Now, what does this EZcon meant for? If you are using MSI latest liquid AIO, as you know that liquid AIO has different type of connection point. Take for example your pump. You have the ARGB cable and you have the pump cable. Followed by your radiator fan, same thing for ARGB and for the PWM. So total you have 4 cables, right? So MSI have came out with the idea, coming out with a proprietary technology known as the EZcon, whereby they have lumped all this cable into one connection point, which this is the easy connector. So assuming the other end is your liquid AIO. So with this, right, less of the cable mesh just into one socket, and making use of the application to control all that I mentioned: the pump ARGB, the fan, and the fan ARGB. Nice touch. Now, if you do not own any of those liquid AIO from MSI that has such technology, they have provided you this cable, which is known as the EZcon cable. On one end, you plug to the motherboard. On the other end, it provides you with additional connection point for your fan and for ARGB, which is meant for your strip or your fans. Nice touch. Next, you have this 8-pin EPS connector. Kindly plug this, which is actually from your PSU, to this. Okay, make sure you make use of the GPU connection or connector from the PSU, which is 8-pin PCIe. Why do you need to plug this? If you are populating a Gen 5 graphic card and 2 Gen 5 M.2, right, you will need more power. So to stable the run, please provide power. Okay, else if you are running probably Gen 4 or Gen 3, right, well, you can not plug this But I would advise for more stable usage and operation, make sure you plug your current to this, as in like your power supply 8-pin PCIe to this socket. Alright. Next, you have two USB 2.0 header, and at the top where you see all this pin, I have no clue what this is, I'll just skip. Followed by a front 3.0 USB socket, which is providing the Type A USB port at the front. Over here, this is the front I/O panel where you connect to your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED, and your reset LED. Now, MSI have done it again, as in like giving you this extension. What does this do? As you know that the case itself, you have this kind of cables, okay, that label hard disk, LED, reset switch, and such. So having those split cables, you can connect over here, and using this right to cover it. Okay, let me just do it nicely. See, imagine you plug all this in, right? You can use this to cover, and on the other end is just plug and play, one single connector. So you can just connect to your front I/O pins. See, this is done. Now, if you want to do maintenance and you want to remove the motherboard, right, instead of removing all the separate pins, you can just remove this. See, do your maintenance. Once you place this back to your case, right, you can just plug this in. It's a very cool function. See, nice touch. Now next, you have this 3-pin 5V ARGB connector. Now right at the top, let me just zoom in and to show you. Okay, right at the top of the front I/O pins, you have this 4 connection point, or should I say 4 pin. This is meant for your physical speakers. And right beside it, there is this 2 pin. This is meant for your clear CMOS. So when you short it, hold it for 3 to 5 seconds. When you let go, right, whatever configuration you have done in your UEFI or BIOS, you will be back to default. And right at the top, you have 4 pins over here. This is known as the safe boot pin. In the event, if you have done your configuration in UEFI or BIOS, even by resetting or clearing the CMOS, right, it does not boot up, you can make use of this safe boot function. You just need to use a dip switch to plug on it, enable it, and when you boot, right, it will take you to the default BIOS. So this is another alternative to boot your system if your clear CMOS failed. Now I'm going to zoom out. And as for the front, okay, you have 2 4-pin PWM fan header. Total of 4 SATA socket. Now, as I mentioned to you, all the M.2s that you have populated, right, they do not share lanes, so they will operate. If you add on 4 more hard disks, be it 2.5 inch or 3.5 inch, all will operate and they will not share lane. Nice touch. Next, you have this Type C socket, which is meant for your front I/O Type C plug, or I'm not saying plug, I mean the socket. And this is of Gen 1, running at 10 gig, or should I say transfer rate of 10 gig. Next, you have a 24-pin connector, which is meant for you to draw power and to connect to here to supply the power to your motherboard. Followed by the debug LED. This is good for troubleshooting, assuming that you have some RAMs that is not plugged nicely, or even your socket, I mean your processor is not plugged correctly, right? There will be indication over here telling you that, hey, look, there's something wrong about it, you have to check. So this is very useful. Next, you have a 3-pin 5V ARGB connector, followed by 3 more PWM fan headers. Now do take note on the white and the gray one over here. If you are using liquid AIO, make sure you connect the pump header to the white one, because this will supply more amperage to have a stable rotation on your pump. Okay, take note on this. Followed by the CPU fan connector. This is in fact CPU underscore fan. If you are running liquid AIO, radiator fans, make sure you plug to this. Else, if you are using air cooler, make sure your air cooler fans is plugged to this. Because when you boot the system, right, if you didn't plug anything to this, right, you might have a prompt saying that there are no fan plug to this. Okay, this is just a safety feature. Take note of this. Now right at the top, nothing much at the top, you just have two 8-pin EPS connector. And I always mention that for normal usage, light overclocking, light undervolting, you only need to plug one, unless you are doing LN2 overclocking, as in like nitrogen, liquid nitrogen overclocking, then you might need to use two, as you will need to pull more V core to your processor. But at all times, as mentioned, use only one. And you might have the question, hey, can I plug two even if I know that you only use one? Yes, you can, no problem. It's just that, you know, you will just draw one instead of two. At the rear on my lower left, you'll be provided with two very tiny buttons. Right at the bottom, this is the BIOS Flashback button, and right at the top, this is the CLR CMOS button. Next to it is a HDMI port, and this port is making use of the integrated graphic on your processor to project out, and it has a capability of 8K 60Hz. You'll be provided with total of 7 USB Type A port, where the red ones has a transfer rate of 10 gig, the blue ones have the transfer rate of 5 gig, and 2 USB Type C port. Now there are no USB 4.0 port, sad to say, but these are sufficient. Where one of the Type C is having a transfer rate of 10 gig, the other is having a transfer rate of 20 gig. Now, right at the top over here is a 5 gig Ethernet port, and some of the B850M motherboard which I've tested, right, do not give you a 5 gig port. In fact, those are only 2.5. This board is the only board that I find having a 5 gig port. Nice. Then over here you have the Wi-Fi 7, and it does have Bluetooth function, which is version 5.4. And over here are the audio, which is meant for your speaker, your microphone, and the SPDF out. Now, attention to details of what MSI have done. As you know that this will be at the back of your board. So if you want to click on the CLR CMOS button, right, you might be wondering, will I click wrongly? Well, take a look. Okay. Not too sure you can see. Now, for the CLR CMOS button, right, is projecting out, so we can feel it. So when you press it, right, you'll know that, oh, the longest button is for the CLR CMOS. Else the sunken in, right, this is the BIOS Flashback. Nicely done. Well done, MSI. Besides this, a neat feature on the antenna. Right now, instead of screwing the antennas to the motherboard, right, you only need to plug it in. See? It's just plug and play. And if you want to remove it, you can just remove it. And if it happens that you lost this antenna and you have the older version, right, where it screws on, right, you still can do it. As you can see, there are still threads. So you can use either the new antenna or the old antenna. I've set up the system, and just to show you how long it takes for it to boot into UEFI. And it's very commonly known in AM5. This is known as the RAM training cycle. This will often happen for the very first time when you piece up your system, and you will take time to verify your RAMs and all the rest of the component that you've put in. Now, as you can see on my left, there is this black box. This is where this projection is connected to. So when it loads to UEFI, right, you will see it at the background. Now, right in front, or should I say in the middle, you have this stopwatch. The moment I press on the start key, I will click on the stopwatch, just to show you how long it takes to boot. Here we go. Now, when you're booting out the system, right, do not shut it down, even if it takes very long, probably about 3 to 5 minutes. Reason being, right, AM5 have this characteristic where you verify the RAMs and the rest of the component. Especially for those of you who migrate from AM4 to AM5 platform, take note, this is something very common. And for those of you who actually migrate from Intel to AM5 platform, this is what you're going to see too. So it takes time for it to verify. As I talk, when you look at the time, stopwatch, right, it's still ticking. So let it run. Do not be anxious about anything or so. So just leave it as it is. Let it run. They'll be coming to a point of time where it will boot into UEFI. So do not panic and to shut it down. Now, it also greatly depends on your RAMs. The more capacity RAMs you have, right, as in like 64 gig, 96 gig, or even more, that you'll face a much more longer time. So right now, I'm just going to let it run. Do not touch it, as mentioned. Now, this is only for the very first time. Once you have let it run, and the second time when you boot up, right, it will be much faster. Alright, it starts cycling right now. So as you can see, the stopwatch itself is almost 1 minute plus, and it's still not booting up to UEFI. I will stop once this is booted up on UEFI. See, it's done. So this take about 1 minute 36 seconds, not so bad, based on the fact that these are 32 gig kit RAMs. If you are using 64 and 96, right, that will be even longer. Probably I would say 3 to 5 minutes, or sometimes even to 10 minutes. So at this moment in time, do not panic. As mentioned to you, this is only your first time. Now, this have been verified. The RAM training has been done. I'm just going to reset my stopwatch. Okay, the initial start take 1 minute 36 seconds to boot. Right now, I'm just going to turn off this system and turn it back on. And you can see that it will be much more faster. Here we go, we're going to press again. So this is after verification. The first time you have boot is already done. I started off from cold boot and to boot the machine. And as you can see, right, it will take in no time to boot up. In fact, it's lesser time. See, 17 seconds for it to boot. Now let's see what this motherboard can do when you plug in a high-end processor. As you can see here, these are the system specs that I'll be using for this test. Now, you can pause this and take a look all the components over here. But do take note that on the cooler side, I'm using an old cooler, which is the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 360. But I've swapped out the fans using performance fans coming from Nidec, known as the Gentle Typhoon. And this is an open bench test. And some of you have saw what I made use of and curious what kind of case I'm using. Well, I'm using the Bisky BCEX with an add-on bracket that able me to mount the 360 liquid AIO, and this is the serial number, which is the BST3FN. Now, I've done tweaks on the PBO2, and these are based on my own tweaks and findings on this processor. Please do not assume that you copy my configuration, right, it might work for your processor, because it depends on the bin on the chip. But it's on the safe side if you want to copy and try and error. Okay, first thing what I've done is to set my RAMs to have Expo Profile 1 to have this tight timing at this voltage and at this bus speed. Next thing I've done is the UClock DIF, which I've set to 1:1 ratio, and followed by setting this high efficiency mode. Now, MSI have this function where you can trigger your RAMs to have the tightest timing. So I've done this and I've set the memory timing preset to the tightest. Next, I've done the vCore offset. As you can see here, I've made the value negative 0.05 volt. And what this does, as you know that if I were to leave it to auto, right, the vCore will always stay at 1.35 and such and above in order for it to stay at the frequency. So the system is actually pulling that much vCore. When I'm doing an offset, right, this will help the system to determine how much the processor is needed in order to run at that frequency and of a lower temperature, lower voltage. So this is why I've done the offset. Followed by the PBO2, which I've set the PBO limits, as you can see over here, the PPT, TDC, and EDC. Okay, this is based on my tweaks. And next, I've done the curve optimizer. Now, a lot will just put all call negative 30, but I want my system to be stable. That's why I'm giving it a bit more slack. So having a magnitude of 20, right, not the full 30, not stretching to the max. So this will help the system to sustain at a stable rate and consistent frequency. Another neat function of the 9000 series processor, you'll be able to make use of curve shaper. I know this is very daunting to configure this. I will leave a URL in my description where it takes you to another content creator known as Skater Bencher. He did a very well documentation on how to make use of curve shaper. As a brief introduction, curve shapers are basically 3 points more on the curve optimizer. Meaning to say you can set the let's say the medium frequency on the 3 points, like the low, the mid, and the high temperature. And as you can see here, right, I've configured them properly and it's in sequence, which having a negative value. So be it the mid and the high, I've set the same. So these are my settings. As for the application that I'll be using, as you can see, this is what you will see. I'll be making use of the Ryzen Master, the Cinebench R23, running along with the Firmark. So I will bench them together, as in like letting Firmark to run on the background and to run the benchmark. And why am I doing this? As I am not using a discrete graphic card, I just want to make use of the integrated graphic on the processor to push more stress on the processor itself. So that's the reason why I do not use a discrete graphic card. And also hardware info to show you all the core frequency, inclusive of pulling the stats over here. Now, as why do I place this Ryzen Master up here? Based on the fact that the configuration that I've done, which you see here on the UEFI, the PBT, the TDC, and the EDC, all these numbers, right, will be equivalent to what you see on the benchmark, which you can see here, 223 for a PBT, 200 on both TDC and EDC. And as for the curve optimizer value, which is negative 20, so throughout the whole run, right, you will see this. Now to show you how it performed and to explain to you first on how I did the run. I fixed up the whole system. I let it run for 30 minutes stress test on Cinebench together with Firmark. Then I let it idle for 5 minutes and I again run 10 minutes, which is the throttle test, and this is the last 10 minutes. And if you notice on the clock itself, right, I have resetted it. Same goes to the bar over here. Things for you to take note are the stats over here, the clock frequency of all the cores in this graph. And if you have noticed, right, I have a result over here which is running off 30 minutes, and this is 42K. Okay, having this 9950X on this motherboard, that is the first result that I got from the 30 minutes. Now as I run, take a look, see it's running, all these are running live. Now take note on the time. I'm just going to pull all the way to the last 3 minutes. This is where the things happen. Okay, around here. So as I run, right, take a look at the temperature. My goodness, 79 degrees Celsius. I am in room temperature 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, as some of you have witnessed. I always conduct the test in room temperature, not with aircon. And I am able to sustain this processor at 79 degrees Celsius. Having the limit on the throttle limit, which you can see over at the Ryzen Master, is at 95 degrees Celsius. So you can see it's running pretty cool. And the system overall, right, when you look at the thermal on the motherboard, which is the system, the MOSFET, and these are my DDR5 RAMs, slot 1 and slot 2, and my drive temperature, which is the M.2. It is hovering not above 60. In fact, it's around 55 to 56, which the hottest is the MOSFET. The rest are doing very well. And not only this, look at the frequency over here. Okay, and the reason that I've done a reset, because I want to see how much can it boost. As you can see over here, the maximum, these are the maximum boost that it can do. And it's hovering consistently at 5. Okay, if you were to look over here, right, the clock speed is at 4.9, but in fact, all these cores, right, are calculated out. That's why you have the 4.9 over here. The actual fact is actually running on 5 gig. See? It's weakness over here. And one thing I like to mention that when I do the configuration on all the PBO2, the curve optimizer and the curve shaper, right, is based on my own tweak, whereby I find that the frequency is stable. Take a look at this graph over here. It's consistent. There might be some breaks over here, but overall, if you to judge, right, see, okay, it's okay at the start. Let's not talk about it. That is, you know, it's trying to figure the point. Now, when I move along, right, see, it's very consistent. It even boosts at certain period of time. So throughout, it's very consistent. The thermal is fantastic. Okay, and all this clock speed, I am satisfied based on the fact that for a 9950X, the base clock is 4.3. Okay, if you set this as default without setting PBO2, right, when you run the Cinebench, right, you will be getting consistent of 4.3, 4.4 and such. It will never hit 5 gig. Alright, so this is actually a very good result on what this motherboard can do. And by the end, right, when I end this, just to show you the results, see, 43K. This is really very fantastic. It's a tanker and a performer. Now, this is additional info which I got from the internet, from Video Card. They have mentioned about MSI having a better Wi-Fi adapter which allow channel of 160Hz to 320 MHz frequency. As I've tested, yep, it's quite true. They are making use of a better network adapter. Let me just show you. Now, if you guys are interested to know this article, I will leave this URL in my description. You can just read. Alright, as it mentioned that they have provide a better network adapter card, or should I say the Wi-Fi card, as compared to their competitors. Now, with this say, right, this is the actual machine that I've actually recorded down. I have disabled the 5 gig port, which is the RJ45, and enable my Wi-Fi. And they are using this Qualcomm Fast Connect 7800 Wi-Fi adapter. So when I did the run on speed test, okay, this is actually my internet based on the Wi-Fi, it is drawing at 6 gigahertz signal, and this is how it is. It's very consistent. It did not drop at all. It's always staying at 2.5 gig, 2.4 to 2.5 gig on download, and upload is even more fantastic. Okay, right now you hit 2.6. See, it's fantastically fast. So this is actually the Wi-Fi adapter. Now, coming to the port where I have enabled it, okay, I have disabled the Wi-Fi. I've enabled my LAN port. I have not done a lot of B850M motherboard, but those that I've touched with, which I will be doing content on them, I have never came across any of those boards that having a 5 gig port. This is my first. Alright, so I enable the 5 gig port and check it out what happened based on my internet speed. See, it jumps straight 4.7 to 4.8 gig, which is near to 5 gig. Not only on the download, but on the upload. My goodness, this is fantastic. In this section, I'll be showing you the UEFI interface. Some of you might not want to watch this. You can jump ahead towards my conclusion, and there is a timestamp for that. This is the UEFI of this motherboard, where you have 2 modes. Right now, what you see is the easy mode. If you want to go to advanced, you can either click here or press F7. See? Now, what do you see on the easy mode? You'll see all this over here. You can set on and off, up to you, which is the game boost. Then the AI, if you have any applications that make use of this or any device. Now for the memory, you can set to standard or you can set to expo profile. Okay, so it's a very easy one-click function to enable your expo profile of your RAMs. And these are the stats: your motherboard, the BIOS version, the date of the BIOS, and your motherboard temperature. And over on my right, this is where it shows you the processor that I'm using, then followed by the RAMs at the bottom. Now skipping over here, the easy configuration. Now Precision Boost Overdrive is a one-click function where you can select all this preset, having the system not to go over 65 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Celsius or such. Or you can have the boost function, which is at the bottom. See? Then for memory try, well, this I've not really tested, but you can test out with a tighter timing of your RAMs and such. You can do this, but when it fails, right, you'll just go back to whatever you've set on Expo. X3D game mode, well, this is meant for your X3D processor, which right now I'm not using, so I'm not going to touch this. Graphic detection is either set it to auto, or you can ignore. When you set to ignore, right, it means to say that your graphic card, if you plug in a discrete graphic card, right, it will read that discrete graphic card. Now for MSI driver utility installer, I would just advise you to leave it as enable, as the very first time when you install Windows 11, right, when you boot up the system, there will be a prompt for you to install all the necessary driver and chipset, and this is very essential, so leave this as enable. Next will be the default home page. You can set either to show your system set, etc, etc. Now over at this media section, right, now as mentioned to you, for the CPU fan, if you have not the CPU underscore fan connector, if you have not plugged to it, right, you might want your system to prompt you saying that, you know, there's no fan header plug-in, so we can just turn this on as a warning. And the rest you can set, this is right now reading at degrees Celsius, you can set it to Fahrenheit, up to you. See, it will, after when you reboot, right, this will change to Fahrenheit. For this, I'll just leave it on. This is meant for Windows 11 is necessary. Then easy LED control, which is for your debug LEDs. You can turn it off or you turn it on. This, the ERP ready, well, this is actually energy saving, so I'll just leave it. Other than that, you show you the storage preset and such. And for the fan profile, right now I'm only plugged to my Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, which only have the radiator fan, and the pump does not show you readings. That's why it's only showing one reading. You can configure this by pressing this, and you can set according to the fan header that you've plugged, and according to this. Okay, for example, you can set this at 50 to run at 50%, probably, I would say, and such. See, or you can make use of this graph to do your settings. Alright, not gonna go in depth. This is meant for your fan curve. Before I explain the top section, I will talk about the bottom section where you have all this boot priority, where you have the drive, hard drive, your USB thumb drive, and etc, etc. You can move this to become the boot priority, as in like to boot on USB thumb drive, or you can boot to hard drive. See, so these are the sequence that you can drag and pull to the front. This is what I meant by boot priority. At the top, you have this M flash. In the event if you want to update to latest BIOS using UEFI method, you can use this M flash, or you can use the physical BIOS flashback that is located at the back of your rear I/O. Now next will be the hardware monitor. This is meant for you to configure your fan curve, as I showed you before. Not going to go in depth. Next is this MSI performance preset. When you click on this, right, it will give you two configurations, either to set your PBO to auto or to enable. I'll just leave it to auto. Next, you have this profile. Now in the event if you have configured everything and you want to save the profile, you can click here. Then either you save F9 and to save on the profile over here, or to load. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Next are the favorite. Now for the favorite, I will not go into this. I will explain to you later how this is being done. Then next is the BIOS slot, telling you that what are the configuration that you've done. Alright. F1 help as usual, shortcuts on all the keys. Now this is languages. You can set languages up to you. You can make it Chinese. See, all this will be in Chinese. I'll set it back to English. Now as for the search function, let's say you know there's a function within the UEFI, but you wouldn't want to click and click and click. You can click on the search and type on the function. See, it will show you the functions. So this is how it works. Next we'll be taking snapshot. Now when you're taking a snapshot, make sure you have a thumb drive on it. The key is when you click on this, right, whatever you see here will be screenshot and to save on the thumb drive. In fact, the short key is F12, or you can use this icon too. And this is ASIC. I don't have to talk about it. Right now I'm just going to take you to the advanced mode. This is what you'll see on the advanced mode, whereby you'll be shown with all the stats of your M.2s and such, and the system info on what motherboard, what processor and such. Now if you move along with the advanced mode, this is what you're going to see. For PCI-E system settings, this is meant for you to set your resizable bar or to set the slot on your M.2s and your PCI-E lanes to which generation. You can do that. Next you have the ACPI settings. This is where you can configure if you want your system to alert you if there is a over temperature kind of things. Now integrated terahertz, whereby you can set this to ignore, so you can use your discrete graphic card if you want to. In fact, this is all the ports and such where you want to enable or disable. Now for me, right, I will be using all this stuff over here, so I'll just leave it auto or let it on. Else for the HD audio controller, right, which is the onboard audio, I'm not using it, so I disable it. Now good thing when you disable things that you do not need, right, your system will boot faster. Followed by the integrated graphic configuration. Now this you can set whether to boot to your integrated graphic device or your discrete graphic card. I'll just leave this as usual. Then you can set this to either you disable it on the integrated graphic card, or you want to set to game mode and such. Next will be USB configuration. Nothing much, I'll just leave it as it is. Followed by the power management setup. This is where some of you might want to fiddle with. Normally I will not touch this, I will just leave it as it is. Now for the BIOS mode, right now it's UEFI. You can set it to CSM, which I don't advise you guys to do that. Now this is often used by myself, which is wake up event setup, because I've actually set up my mobile device, right, to trigger to click on the start button and my system will boot. But make sure that you have your LAN connection connected, because this will not work on Wi-Fi. And what I've enabled, I will just do this. Resume by PCIe device, I'll set it to enable. Followed by the click BIOS configuration. Now this is meant for you to set to, let's say you're in advanced mode, right, set it what you want to see, right, instead of seeing the system stat, you want to see advanced section or the overclock section and such. So you can do this. Then for the profile, which is the favorites, you can set whatever favorites you want to see. Secure erase. Now this, I will not advise you to secure erase your M.2 using the motherboard, because for M.2s, right, it's best to use its brand application to do the secure erase, as I've done some mistake in the past whereby I made use of the motherboard built-in secure erase. It ended up that my M.2, right, not able to boot and went to RMA. So do be careful on this. Now for MSI driver utility installer, please set this as enable, because the very first time when you install Windows, it will prompt you from MSI. Okay, there's one message asking you to install all the drivers. So this is essential. It's better to have this enabled rather than later on, right, when you go to the device manager having all the exclamation mark on your device, you have to go to the website and to download the drivers. So instead of doing that, right, this is a very good function where you enable it. Okay, NVMe, I mean the M.2 self-test, you can test, okay, to check for signal, I mean errors and such. Now coming to the overclock, AMD overclocking, I will not use this to set my PBO2. Reason being, right, take a look, if I were to set it to precision boost overdrive, okay, when I set my PBO2, right, see these are all in millivolts, okay, not in voltage. So I will just skip this, not using this. Now next will be overclocking section, which is this. This is where you can do your configuration on your RAMs to set your expo profile. See, I've set this, okay, I'm not set. So you can set it to expo profile. And to do the adjustment that you want, like the F clock, etc., the U clock, I'll set this to this 1:1 ratio. And also one thing good about MSI board is that they have this high efficiency mode. I'll set it enable. Once you've done this, right, you can make use of these features over here. The memory timing preset, which I will set it to tightest. Or even you want it to be more challenging, right, though you have set the XMT profile, you can try on tighter timings. Okay, but if it fails, right, you will just go back to your expo profile that you have done. Now next will be the advanced DRAM configuration. This is all the timers that you can set. Okay, all the way down. Now for voltage configuration, you can set this to load line calibration, etc., etc. Most of the time I will set it to in between, which is mode 4, as you can see over here. Oops, see, these are the mode. Normally I choose the line between mode 5 or mode 6 when I do PBO2, because I wouldn't want to be the extreme pulling loss of voltage or no voltage at all. Okay, so these are things that I will do. Other than that, right, I will not touch. I only do the load line calibration. But for some of you who is challenging enough, right, you can set yourself if you understand what these are. Alright, now come to the CPU core voltage. As mentioned that I've done an offset, right, this is where I've done the offset. I'll just set offset mode. I'll set this to negative value and with a voltage of 0.05 volt. Now you can set to 0.1 and you try it. If it crash, right, then set it to 0.5. Most of the time 0.5 will work. Okay, other than that, okay, nothing much below. These are all the RAM settings, the voltage and such. I will leave it as auto. Okay. CPU specification. Oh, just telling you the information on your CPU. If you want to know more information like the stepping and such, it will give you this. Then the memory Z is telling you the RAM information. See? All this. Now, other than that, right? This is strange. How come overclock does not have that? Okay, missed out some part. At the top, so sorry about this. You have this OC expert mode. You can set it to normal, but most of the time I will set it to expert. Then for CPU setting, right, you can set the ratio, be it per core, CCD, or etc. Or the overall ratio, which you can see here, it's 4300. You can set it, some of them, or some of you might just set 50 or even higher, but I'll just leave it as auto. Okay, I'm more towards like having a stable platform rather than push, your system and it get crash and hang. Now, for this advanced CPU configuration, I will make use of this to do my PBO2. See, AMD overclocking. By the way, these are the things that you can set. Now, coming to the AMD overclocking, precision boost overdrive, and I'll set to, say these are the modes that you can do. If you do not want to configure it yourself, right, you can set to the enhanced mode, the thermal point, which means to say that you don't want the system to run above 65 degrees Celsius, 75 degrees Celsius, or 85 degrees Celsius. And with this mode, right, as you can see here, the enhanced mode 1, you can even set to enhanced mode boost 1 and such. But for me, I'll just set it to advanced as I wanted to do my own configuration. Now for PBO limits, a lot will just choose motherboard, but I want to limit my drawing voltage, so that's the reason why I've set to manual. And as for this chipset, or should I say this processor, which is the 9950X, right, I know the max is at 200. Okay, I'm just going to pull a bit more, which is at 238. But when I'm doing this, right, as you have witnessed earlier on the benchmark, I've set this, but it pulled up to 200. That's the max. So this is a good configuration. I've actually done all these tweaks myself, as in to try and error and such. So I came up with this. Then for precision boost overdrive scaler, a lot will just set to 9 or 10. I would advise you not to do this. You are actually pulling more voltages. Okay, you're killing the processor. I would definitely not do this. Not at all. I'll set it to auto. I'll leave it. Now for CPU boost clock override, if you want to push, for me, normally I do not use this as I want my system to be stable. As you can see, the graph on my benchmark, right, it's flat. It's almost flat. If you were to enable this, right, yes, you can do that. It will give you more boost. You can set it to 200, up to you. But for me, right, this fluctuates a lot, and I can't have this to do my work. So that's why I just disable it. I don't really use this at all. Performance thermal throttle limit. Now, by default, it's at 95 degrees Celsius. You can set it to 80 or even 85, up to you. But right now, I'm just going to set to auto. Now, for the GFX curve optimizer, this is meant for you to tweak your integrated graphic, which I don't find there's a necessary to it. Next will be the curve optimizer. Now, for curve optimizer, there are certain ways to play it. Either you set to all core, which you can set to negative. Now, a lot will just put 30. I understand. For me, I'll just put 20. I will give it some slack. Or you can do per core, which is more tedious. And for those of you who actually use high-end processor, like having the 16 core and such, right, you can set to per CCD. That means to say the first 8 core and the last 8 cores. For the first 8 core, I would advise set it to 15. Okay, then for the last 8, right, I will set it to 10. This is a stable configuration, but somehow you're more challenging, you can put 20 and above. But for me, right, I have find a sweet spot on both CCD1 and CCD0. So instead of using per CCD, right, I would just use all core negative 20. I know that my system can go negative 30, but I just want to give it more, juice to be more stable. So this is what I will set. Next will be the curve shaper. Now this is very daunting to configure. I would advise you to hit on my URL in my description where it takes you to Skater Bencher. He will explain to you what curve shaper does, and make sure you understand fully before you configure this. I'm not going to go in depth, just going to escape all the way back. Now next is security. Assuming that you've done all the configuration and you share your system with your siblings and you don't want them to touch your configuration, you can always set a administration password. The rest I will just skip because I wouldn't know what they are for. Next will be secure boot. Now this is important if you are playing Valorant, because most of you will have this prompt stating that your device is not compatible to play with Valorant. You have this error message. What you need to do is come over here, set your secure boot mode to custom. Okay, and yep, that will be it. But remember this, if you have set this secure mode to custom, right, if you want to reformat your hard drive or your M.2, or should I say the OS drive, make sure you come here to set back to standard. Okay, if you don't do this right, you're gonna have problem with installing OS on your M.2. So take note on this. Now besides this, okay, hang on. Is there anything else on boot? Oh, that's all. Okay. Besides this, under boot, these are the boot sequence that you can do. Like what you want to boot first when the system boot up. Or you can make use of the icon below, as you can see here. You can drag and drop. It's the same thing. Then the rest, hard disk drive, BBS priority, you can set. If you have various of, for example, let's say you have Linux OS, you have Windows OS, you can select from here. Then the rest I wouldn't want to go through. These are quite standard. Last but not least, save and exit. Well, this is self-explained. I don't have to talk about it. The MSI B850M Mortar WiFi. What are my thoughts about this board? Well, if you are a gamer and a light content creator that does not require ARGB on the motherboard and do not require a lot of storage, and you wanted something compact, durable, reliable, and yet able to perform, this is the board for you. Why do I say so? The construction of the board is so sturdy. It's made of 8-layer PCB and is so firm as compared to the previous generation, or should I say the model, which I've been using this to do all my content benchmark and such. This is a 6-layer PCB, and it's kind of, you know, it does flex. But this, right, when I hold on it, it's so sturdy. And another thing is that how they design it is exactly the same as what they have designed on the older generation, but they have enhanced it on the fins and such. And this does dissipate more heat. As you have witnessed on my benchmark, on a high-end processor, which is a 9950X, okay, it can hover at a temperature of 79 degrees Celsius and having a consistent, as I show you the graph, 5 gig consistently. And the rest of the component, like your DDR5, your M.2s, and your MOSFET, they don't go above 60 degrees Celsius. In fact, most of these are on below 50 degrees Celsius, except for the MOSFET, which is 56 max. So this is how durable it is. Besides this, the rest of the things that I mentioned, like the Wi-Fi connection and such, it does check out. They make use of good grade Wi-Fi 7 adapter, inclusive of the LAN connection. As you have witnessed, right, when I show you the speed test, it does not, you know, do some intermittent disconnection and such. It will just go all the way consistently at that rate, which is based on the spec. It does match. Well done. Now, as I mentioned to you, the construction is very solid. Next is in fact the release and locking mechanism. Okay, let me just put this one side. First of all, the PCI-E slot for your graphic card. I like this implementation, whereby if you want to release the card, you just press this button. You don't have to hold on it, okay, because this lever will leave unlocked, having you to have both hands to hold on to the graphic card and to pull it out. This is more sturdy, more firm. Unlike some of the motherboard, whereby you have to hold on this button and use the other hand to remove off the graphic card. What if accident happen? You might just break the PCIe bottom section. See, it's always best to have both hands holding on to the card rather than have one hand. And modern graphic cards, right, are very heavy. Second thing, the M.2. Now, some of you have witnessed that for the old model, right, which is the B850M Mortar, I have broke the top armor shield based on the fact that I have, you know, worn out the screw thread. That's why I can't screw in. Thanks to MSI support to have provided another piece for me with the new screws. So with this said, right, you don't have to worry about the wear and tear on the screws itself, as the new function, which is toolless, see, is just grab and that's it. You want to place it back, just put it back and park. And also to the fact that the chipset heatsink is built sturdy. Why do I say this? Now take a look at the old model. See, it shakes. Else for this, right, no matter how I shake it, it doesn't shake. It is intact, firmly, you know, pressured to the B850 chip. Nicely done. Next, well thought of, the clear CMOS button. No, this is a BIOS flashback, sorry. The clear CMOS button and the BIOS flashback button, MSI have thought about it, so they have protrude out this clear CMOS button up. So when this case, when this motherboard, right, is in a case and you have to reach to the back, right, you don't have to pull out the case. You can just feel the button. As long as protruding out, that is the clear CMOS button. Well thought, nicely done. Now, another factor is that I have mentioned that there are no USB 4.0 port, as I do require that for high-speed transfer of data. But this board has sufficient enough. Okay, if you do not require such high, you know, transfer rate, you can make use of the you still can make use of this board based on the fact that you still have a 20 gig transfer rate port. The Type-C port. Else for the other two, which is here and the front, the Type-C is 10 gig transfer rate. But that's more than enough to transfer. Additional to it, this PCIe power connector over here that supply the PCIe lanes over here, be it your PCI-E slot or your M.2. MSI have thought about it, getting ready if you were to populate all this slot with Gen 5 components, like your graphic card, like your M.2s. If you generate 2 together with it, right, it's going to take a lot of current. So to prevent from current drop and intermittence or disconnection and such, they have provided this so that there are sufficient power to power up all your Gen 5 devices. So this is one thing very good. Now, one last point which I like to point out, whereby there is a third M.2 slot. Now this is just my assumption, based on the fact if you were to populate a Gen 4 M.2, right, Gen 4 M.2 will heat up pretty hot unless you use a heatsink. But the heatsink itself, you have to keep worried that does the case cutout for the motherboard area, right, is big enough for you to cater that. So another solution which I did mention is that to place a thermal pad. If let's say, for example, the cutout is down here, okay, and down here on the case is actually metal, you can place a thermal pad just to transfer the heat off from the M.2 to your case. Not an issue. But still, in general, if you populate a Gen 4 M.2 over here, right, it's directly beneath here. So what if you have populated a Gen 5? Wouldn't the PCB itself, right, generate a lot of heat? So that's my concern. So this is the only thing that I am worried about on the third slot. So as a safe measurement, if I'm to use it, right, I would to place a Gen 3 instead of Gen 4, just as a storage drive. Now, final thing, I'd like to apologize to MSI that I know you have been asking me to, pump out the content for this motherboard for the embargo date, but somehow I hold on it. I did not publish based on the fact that I have been using this B850M Mortar, and everyone can witness that I kept on using this to use on a 7950X processor, and it holds very well. In fact, I've been abusing this for doing all the benchmark, 30 minutes, 5 minutes idle, 10 minutes, throttle test and such. It's been a cycle through all the liquid I/O. So how many liquid I/O does this board have gone through with all the benchmark and with all the tough abusiveness on this board? So I was curious, will this board survive if I'm going to place a high-end latest 9000 series processor. There you have it. The result is shown. I have been using this board without doing a content on a daily basis, finding the correct tune for this 9950X, and I got it right based on the bin on this processor, and I've abused this board on the benchmark. I have done again and again based on the fact, try and error and such. It survived. Nothing screw up. Okay, I can serve the web, I can compile my files, I can even transfer my stuff. And having all the internet connection, it does prove that this board is worthy to purchase. They have made use of high-end, I should say very good quality Wi-Fi adapter and the LAN connection. As mentioned to you, right, these are very consistent. There are no drop rates, no nothing. With this said, I am proud to tell you that this is a tanker and a performer. So if this is within your budget of, I would say, $350 USD to $400, it's a good buy. Based on so many functions that I've told you and how stable it is, I can abuse the latest processor. Well done. Now, something to take note regarding about the battery itself. Now, this is actually a very minor issue. This, they have adapted to the ITX way of plugging the BIOS. If this is to, gone dead, right, you probably have to find a replacement, which is meant for either for your laptop or for your ITX board. All right, so take note on this. Other than that, I have nothing much to talk about this board. Nothing but full of praises. It is one of the best M-ATX motherboard that I've ever tested. With this said, I'd like to thank MSI to have provided this board for me to share with everyone. And if you are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.